All right. Thank you for joining AutoRABIT and CodeScan for today's webinar, Enhanced Code Security and Development Velocity for Salesforce Development Teams. I'm Chris Gabert, VP of Strategic Marketing for AutoRABIT. And before we kick off this digital event, I'd like to note just a few housekeeping items. We'll address questions at the end of the presentation, but you can submit them anytime throughout the session through the Q&A section on your screen. And then in addition to myself and the other presenters today, we're also joined by Rebecca from CodeScan and Jayashri from AutoRABIT, who are going to be off camera helping to organize and answer any of those questions that you do submit. So to kick things off, I'd like to introduce our presenters briefly before they introduce themselves. Today, Adrian and Peter are joining us on behalf of AutoRABIT, and then they're joined by Will from CodeScan. Adrian, I will let you take it away.
Thanks very much, Chris. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining this webinar today. We're very excited about our partnership with CodeScan. This was really largely customer driven, where we have joint customers saying, hey, we use AutoRABIT and we'd like to use CodeScan together. So look forward to presenting more of a technical presentation today. Peter?
Yeah, hi team, this is Peter here. I work as a solution architect with AutoRABIT and also I head up the pre-sales team out here in AutoRABIT. Excited today to present the capabilities of AutoRABIT along with CodeScan partnership. Will?
Hey everyone, my name is Will O'Brien and I'm the Customer Success Director for CodeScan, and looking forward to showing you all what we have together and hearing the questions. So I'll tell you a bit about CodeScan first, give you a bit of an introduction. So we've been around for about 6 years now. And in that time, we've built CodeScan out to provide around 350 rules for the Salesforce platform. We're completely Salesforce focused, meaning we cover your Apex, your Lightning, your old Visual Force, and also your Salesforce configuration to try and provide a really holistic quality and security solution. So since we're built exclusively for Salesforce, we're able to really dig deep into what Salesforce developers need and keep up to date with the platform that's really changing quite a bit over time and improving. Adrian, do you want to tell us a bit about AutoRABIT?
Thanks, Will. Yes, AutoRABIT's also been around for a while now. We are in the top 10% of Salesforce ISV partners, so a very strong partnership since we focus on Salesforce as well. And we are known as really an enterprise-grade DevOps platform for Salesforce. So we have actually 2 products, our DevOps product, which you'll learn about our integration with CodeScan today, but also a Vault product, which is data protection for Salesforce as well. We also have gone deep on some ISV capabilities. So if you're trying to deploy Encino, Velocity, Viva, etc., we have some specific functionality in our products around those as well. So our agenda today is really to talk about and focus is around speed, quality, and security. Then Will and Peter will give a bit of an introduction to what the integration is, a demo of the integration, and then we'll go from there. I will say to any AutoRABIT customer out there today that we are not charging any additional cost for this integration. If you do have CodeScan and you have AutoRABIT in the current release that just got pushed, I think last weekend, you can begin using those products together, and we already have customers doing so. Next slide, please. So the focus is around speed, quality, and security. So obviously AutoRABIT, our DevOps platform, allows you to manage your deployments and development with better speed. And where CodeScan fits in is really helping you with the quality, primarily with the quality section of how you do this. So over to Will and Peter to take you through the technical aspects of this.
Yeah, thank you, Adrian. And I just want to talk a little bit about speed. So how we can combine speed along with your quality and security controls to speed up your deployment. So just to give you an introduction, AutoRABIT is an end-to-end continuous delivery suite specifically designed for accelerating the deployments and release of your Salesforce applications. Basically, we are a purpose-built tool which caters to just for your Salesforce needs. Now, along with this, this particular tool, like AutoRABIT, is powered by an integration server, and that is a differentiator what we have with the other tools in the market. It enables automation of your metadata and version, and it supports all your third-party integrations. Like one of the tool is like a CodeScan, where you'll be able to put your quality controls, quality gates. Along with that, we also support the full-fledged version of any version control system available in the market. And along with that, we have a features too. If you are looking for some data loading features, we support end-to-end, and it is like a one-click kind of a data loading along with the parent-child, meaning that if you're trying to migrate the data for a particular object, along with that, if you have relationship, you'll be able to migrate everything together. And also you'll be able to do the sandbox management, defer tracking, and test automation with the tool. With out-of-box features, what AutoRABIT does is it streamlines the complete process for your entire team and helps the organization in implementing continuous integration as a practice for Salesforce. And also it helps you to achieve a higher release velocity, meaning the speed. I'm not talking about weeks or months, like where the typical enterprise face challenges to move your changes just from one environment to other. We are talking about the, like we reduce that very drastically. We can get that to hours and within days. And how we do that is there are different proprietary features what we have built in. Like the way we do the deployments are like we do the deltas, meaning a delta and the incremental build, meaning that let's say that you have a profile. Now profile can have like 500,000 lines of code. Now due to some permission or some changes, you just change like 10 lines of code. Now because of that CI server which is built in, which is a purpose-built kind of a feature, what we do is we identify that 10 lines of code what you change, rather than moving the whole 500,000 lines of code. We identify that 10 lines of code, we put the atomic changes on top of it, and we'll only move that 10 lines, and that way we will increase your speed. And along with that, we do integrate with different tools like CodeScan, wherein you'll be able to put the quality gates. Like it's not just the speed we are trying to move, but you can also put a quality gate. Like you can start that. You don't need to wait for the quality to happen when you're doing the deployment. You can do it right away when you're doing the commits into your version control. Like let's say that you want to commit a change. Along with that, you will be able to integrate with these tools like, you can check the quality of the code. And if everything looks good, then only you'll be able to go ahead and release the code or commit the code into your version control. That way, you're making sure that you are only moving the code which is been cleanly tested, which has been passed the quality, and there are security controls to it. And that way you don't need to do the multiple deployments or multiple commits. So that way we'll be able to move your changes in a faster way. Well, if you'd like to talk more about quality and security.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Peter. So where CodeScan comes into actually the speed as well is defining some standards for your organizations. So if we found that, or a lot of people have found that if you have well-defined standards for your organization, you're able to develop faster, you're able to develop in a way that's easier to for your developers to determine what's going on in your classes, and you're able to develop with the confidence that your releases are going to be cleaner. And how we do that is we create feedback for the devs at an early stage. So we call ourselves an end-to-end tool because we start with the IDE, and being able to visualize those standards in the IDE while the developers are creating the code starts the process to weed out those bugs and vulnerabilities really starts there. Now, once it moves on, what we're trying to do is catch them before we have a loop between your QA and your development. That's really where we're trying to save time. So by catching these bugs early, having the standards well defined, and knowing what constitutes a pass or a fail with those new features coming in, with those fixes, we can really start to see a lot of development, an increase in development velocity. And I think I explained it a bit more quite soon, Chris. If you would like to switch this slide.
Yeah, so next we just have a brief poll. I'm launching it right now, and it will be available to all attendees. The question is, what's your greatest DevOps concern? And you should have a few multiple choice options to choose from here. Give everybody about 30 seconds to use the poll and respond. Answers are trickling in here. So it looks like we're getting a nice split between release velocity, code quality, and data security, actually. About 30% of you say release velocity is your biggest concern, 45% say code quality, and 20% say data security. So we are glad that you're here because that's what we're talking about today. I'm sharing the results for everybody to take a look at. Okay. So Will, on to you.
Thanks, Chris. So yeah, it's great to see a lot of you are caring about code quality because, well, that's where I come in. That's where CodeScan comes in. So at CodeScan, our vision is really to empower the development teams of your organizations to write faster and cleaner code. So, and that, like I mentioned before, rests a lot on getting the visibility on those issues faster. And so how we want to do that is to apply the code standardization and enforce these standards to create quality code as a common practice. So really making sure that everyone knows what the standards are and having them available. Chris, can you move to the next slide for me? Great, thank you. So here's what I was touched on briefly before. We see there's without an automated tool in place, you spend a lot of time with a loop between development and testing. Now that starts to involve more and more people. And as that loop continues, it's costing you money, it's costing you time, and it's really not the most efficient way to deal with those issues. What we're trying to do is define the standards, set them early, and enforce them early as well. So by putting CodeScan shifting left and giving the visibility to developers, they're able to fix those bugs early, and so those bugs don't continue downstream. Once they continue downstream, what we're looking at is an increase in cost to fix those issues. In QA, you're involving your QA team, which could be anywhere from 2 people to 50 people, and those people that are actually involved in fixing those issues increase as it goes further downstream, all the way to, heaven forbid, your customers finding those issues and having to go all the way back down the train. So what we'd like to do, and I'll share my screen here to show you how we do it, is start defining those standards. So what we're looking at now is our CodeScan Cloud dashboard. Now, these 3 white rectangles that we see here are 3 projects coming from Salesforce, GitHub, and Bitbucket. And now these are our built-in integrations. Peter's going to show you the AutoRABIT integration in just a second, but the dashboard and the feedback you're going to get from that scan will be exactly the same. So let me duck into my GitHub project here. Now, what we're seeing on the dashboard here is 2 sets of issues. Now, on the left here in this white section, we have our overall issues. And what this is showing us is a list of bugs, vulnerabilities, and code smells, which are code quality violations that the tool has found in your code. And now that is based on a set of rules that you define. So this is where the standards are start to be defined. So these rules, the issues that are found, are actually determined by a list of rules that you define yourself. Now, CodeScan comes out of the box, as I believe I mentioned before, with over 350 rules now, and that's always expanding. We're making a big push towards the configuration of the tool as well this year. But the issues in either coding or configuration will all pop up here based on what you define. Now, we come out of the box with some standard rule sets that compile some recommended minimums for your quality. But the next step is starting to set thresholds, set these severities of the issues, so you can build up this dashboard to be a really relevant reflection of what's going on in your code. Now on the on the right here, we've got a new code period. And what this is showing us is certain code issues coming in since a certain point. So for example, if you're scanning your organization or you're scanning your organization through AutoRABIT, what this is going to do is when these scans keep running and keep updating, you're able to keep track of the issues that are coming into your organization from a certain point. And the great benefit of this is actually once you've defined these standards and you see all the issues that are available in your code, you're able to get visibility on your legacy code. But we know no one has 131 days immediately to jump in. You're not going to put 50 people right on that. It's like, all right, this is our next 6 months. What we're doing is defining these standards from a certain point and moving forward with those, enforcing those standards. So we can track these issues that are coming in and make sure our code from this point starts to improve. Now, the separation of these three issues. The separation of these three issues allows you to focus in on the different problem areas that it may have in your code. So for example, from our bugs, which include some functional issues, maybe the reassigning parameters, not assigning certain variables, all the way up to calling things like SOCL in loops and things that may cause governor exceptions. Down to vulnerability, a big part of which is checking permissions before accessing resources, and then onto your code smells, which create a kind of stylistic and best practices standard for writing code. Now, a lot of people tend to overlook the code quality or these code smells, but the fact is that they are saving you time. When you have a standard for how you write code, your developers aren't spending time trying to figure out what's going on in a class. You can define that everything is well commented, it's styled in a certain way, and the developer is coming into something very familiar. So you're able to save time digging through the class to determine what it does, and able to start jumping into a class and getting started with what you'd like to do. Now, the fastest way to actually make use of these of this feedback is to incorporate it into your development pipeline, and that of course includes your release pipeline. And having it as a part of that process is a way to it's less jumping. You don't have to feel like you're jumping out of your release pipeline into code quality and back and forth. What we want to do is combine those and make it really standard and comfortable for your developers to know that that is part of the process moving forward. But I'll pass over to Peter to talk more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Will. And just to elaborate a little bit on that part, right, like what Will touched upon, like where we want to make it as a process within your CI/CD pipeline rather than making it as a separate activity. That is what exactly AutoRABIT does. Before I get into the integration with CodeScan, I want to just introduce you to some of the features what AutoRABIT can get onto the table. So it helps you with automated deployment from your user story. It's not just that you always need to rely on your version control. We do support, like if you have your changes in version control, you'll be able to pick it. But we can start with as you are. If you're very new to change set, we can move you away from change set, and we can get you into the more streamlined kind of a deployment. But on the parallel, we can also put a plan where you want to reach to the highest level of maturity. Now, with that, we also can easily deploy metadata changes based on your user stories, your version control, and or based out of your sandbox. Easily deploy metadata changes to multiple environments from source with just one click. Support quick deploy feature, meaning that if you have to quickly deploy, you don't need to worry about packing those changes. You can just with a workflow kind of interface, you'll be able to go ahead and do that. And you can also do a selective or a full deployment, meaning that let's say you packaged it in your version control as a full package. Now, due to some changes or due to some changes in your release process, you want to only do a selective or a full, we will be able to go ahead and do it. Now, all this deployment screen, like it's all easy to use and run, meaning that it caters to even to your admin persona, meaning that admins are very, people who love to not get into too much of complications and who want to just follow the workflow. It is a workflow kind of a interface where very easy to install, very easy to pick up, and the learning curve is very low down there, and you are up and ready. It's basic thing is like you just need to put in all your integrations, like because we need to treat AutoRABIT as a hub and spoke model, wherein we are right at the center, and the hub is nothing but your Salesforce, your version control, your CodeScan. Once we integrate, it's all a workflow kind of interface where you, with a click of a button, you'll be able to go ahead and do it. Now, coming into the security aspect of it, I'll talk about the little bit on the hosting. Like we give the flexibility wherein you can choose different forms of deployment. We are a SaaS based application, we are hosted on cloud. Again, there are different flavors to it where you will be able to go ahead and do it as an on-prem if you're more stringent towards the security. If not, you will be able to run it as a dedicated or a shared cloud. There are a lot of multiple options based on the security aspect of your organization. Now, on top of that, we can enable the role-based deployments. Like we go very deeper into this. Like security is our primary concern along with the speed and quality. So we go very deeper. We can enable the role-based deployments, and based on the rules, you can restrict, you can put a very granular permissions. And also it comes with a rollback. Like it is a one-click rollback. You don't need to worry about the changes what you deployed. With a click of a button, you'll be able to either roll back everything, or you can also do a selective kind of a rollback. Now, along with that, we also have a very like Will talked about, like you need to have, if you have to reach to that highest level of maturity in your release process or within your CI/CD, you need to have those continuous integration kind of a process enabled, which is principles of our DevOps, wherein we support that end-to-end one-click deployment. And along with that one-click deployment, we'll be also able to go ahead and do a lot of activities within that. You can create the whole pipeline. Like you'll be able to go ahead and do the code scan, quality check before the deployment. You'll be able to automate your post and pre and post deployment activities. Along with that, also you'll be able to run your functional tests. Like you can chain all this job together and chain multiple jobs together into multiple environments, and with a click of a button, you'll be able to go ahead and deploy all these changes. Now, I'll share my screen and I'll get into the demo of AutoRABIT. So AutoRABIT again is a enterprise grade tool where we support different flavors and different features for your DevOps need. But today's focus is more on integration with CodeScan. I'm going to touch on different features within AutoRABIT. Like if you want to know more about it, please reach out to our team. We'll be happy to help you and guide you through that. But for today's focus, I'll introduce you to the tool, and then I'll walk you through how the integration with the CodeScan works. Now, as I said, we are a SaaS-based application, and you can see that this is hosted on AWS. On the left-hand side is a menu. We do support different flavors of features within AutoRABIT. Like we have a full-fledged support for our version control. We have our CI jobs. This is what I was talking about. One-click deployment, end-to-end, automating your post-deployment activities, automating your functional tests, creating the pipeline, and so on. Again, if you're just starting with your change sets and you want to move away from change set, make your deployment more streamlined, this is what we'll use, like a very very on-demand kind of a deployment. I talked about the data loader. We have a functionality wherein you'll be able to go ahead and move your changes from one org to the another, and it's org-to-org kind of a deployment powered by the parent-child dependencies, so that you don't need to worry about maintaining those relationships when you're trying to move the data. And along with that, we have a test automation factory, where you want to automate your functional test. We do integrate again with different third-party tools. We'll talk about that for some other day, but now, along with that, we also do support SFDX, meaning that we have a full-fledged support for SFDX. Like within the tool itself, you don't need to worry about any CLIs or commands. With the workflow kind of interface, you'll be able to go ahead and register your dev hub. You'll be able to go ahead and spin up your Scratch hogs. You'll be able to go ahead and create those unlock packages and so on. Now, coming into this admin section, this is where you'll enable all your plugins. Like if you want to register your Salesforce org, you want to register your version control, it's all like OAuth kind of authentication. You just need to, get in, click on the button, register. It takes like less than 30 seconds to register all your integrations. Now, coming here, also, we can enable some of the plugins here. And since we are talking about CodeScan today, and if I just do a check mark here, and if I click on this, this is the parameters what I would input to go ahead and register my CodeScan. Like I'll put my URL, I'll put my host type, whether it is an on-prem kind of a instance for your CodeScan, or it is a cloud, and I'll give my security key, and I'll register my credentials. And then once I click on this test connection, I can see everything is good. I can save my changes. This is the pretty straightforward kind of integration with CodeScan, wherein you'll be able to go ahead and register it. And along with that, we can, these are some of the other parameters what you can set up. Like we support, we align towards the Salesforce releases. Right now, I think the release 50 API has been released. You will be able to pick and choose. You can backtrack your API changes. So based on whatever Salesforce releases, the tool gets updated. Now, coming into the some of the parameters section, right now you can put a validation for this CodeScan, meaning that we can stop the, you can set the CodeScan levels, like if it is okay, warning, or error. So error meaning that if I set to error, based on this, what will happen is like you can stop the deployment, or you can stop the commit if the tool finds that it is set to error. This is a global setting. What I'm doing, like when I get into my feature set, let's say I'm trying to deploy my changes. When I'm doing a code scan, and if it finds something like error, it's going to stop the deployment. And along with that, also we'll be able to enable some of this code scan, validation passes. Like if I click on this code scan pass, you'll be able to set different parameters. So once you set these parameters out here, if you set all those governance and limits, what you want, how you want to handle your code, this is a one-time setup. Once you enable this, now you'll be able to go ahead and use the code scan in different feature set. The code scan is supported in all the feature sets within AutoRABIT. It is in version control, deployment, your CI jobs. So be it any feature, you'll be able to go ahead and do it. Now, let's say that I'm a developer. I am working on a piece of code. I've been assigned a user story. Now I want to take that user story and I want to move it to my integration org for my integration testing. How does CodeScan come into play? So basically, let's say that I can use my commit feature within AutoRABIT. I can select my org, and it's pretty straightforward. And I can select my branch. I want to move that to my integration branch. Now I'll skip all these options. I'll leave everything for default. Once I click on this next, what will happen is it's going to scan the your Salesforce org, what I connected, and it's going to list all the metadata components. Now, this is one of the important features. You don't need to remember what you changed in your org. You'll be able to cherry pick the components out here. Like in this case, I'm just going to select my bot controller. Once I click on this next, it'll take me to that last screen, and here I can do validation checks here. Like let's say that I want to run my code quality here, code scan. So once I click on this code scan, you can see that I can run this for all the classes and triggers. I can set up some parameters. And also along with that, I can also run my pre-validation, meaning I can do the quality check. And once the quality check, everything is passed, I can also connect to my feature org. In this case, I'm trying to deploy into my integration. So I can connect to my integration org, and I'll be able to go ahead and, validate the deployment. This acts as a early warning system, meaning that in a typical scenario, what happens is like you'll be able to go, you will commit the changes, you will deploy the changes. If you have errors, you will come back again, fix those errors, and you'll redeploy the changes. You go through multiple commits, multiple changes. But with AutoRABIT, we enable that early detection system, wherein before even committing the change, what you can do is you can do the quality check of your code, and once that passes, you can take that, validate against your future org, and then you'll be able to go ahead and commit the changes when all the changes are being properly validated. Along with that, we can enable even the review process, like you can put a gate here saying that my code will not be committed into the version control unless until everything is being approved. Once I input all this information and click on this finish, so what happens is it will run the commit process, and if I click on this, you can see it goes through the step of different processes here. Right now, this particular change is being waiting for approved. Along with that, it has done some changes. It ran the static code analysis, which is our code scan. It also ran the validation. Everything looks good, and now it is waiting for the approval. Either a reviewer can log in and he can approve the change, or you'll be able to reject the change. Right till now, the code has not yet reached the version control. We are just making sure that our code quality is good, our validation is good, and it is sitting for the approval right here. Now, getting into this code quality here, you can see if I go to this Epics class again, I can see there are different violations out here, and you can see what are those violations. And if I click on this particular violation, it is going to take you to those violations, and it will show you what are the violations for that. So this way you'll be able to validate the quality of your code within AutoRABIT using CodeScan. And along with that, also you will be able to go ahead and validate your deployment, meaning this was validated against my integration org, and all the validation went well. Now everything looks good, and I can approve this change. Either I can approve or I can reject it. If I approve it, this is where it will go ahead and commit into your version control system. So it gets in a lot of checks. It is also increasing your, reducing your deployment, multiple commits and multiple deployments, and also it is looking for code quality right at the start. So this is how we do the deployments. Now I'll get into the, we can enable that same process here within the deployments too. Like I'll just go through that right now. And you can see here, you can run this code scan along with your deployment. If there is, like I have said, that parameter is an error. And if there is an error which is detected during the code scan, it's going to stop your deployment. Now, if I have to look into this code scan report, I can directly get in here. I can click on this, and I can see what are the different violations which have happened. And if I have to get into the dashboard of CodeScan, I can directly click on that. It takes me to the dashboard for a very detailed view. So we have given you that flexibility where you can move between your CodeScan dashboard and the tool. So same way, you'll be able to go ahead and enable your code scan within the CI jobs. Like CI is nothing but your, where this is where you'll be able to go ahead and create your DevOps pipeline. I have already created a job. I'll just walk you through that step. Now you'll be able to go ahead and set this particular CI job. What it is doing is it's trying to pick up the changes from my version control from a particular branch, and it's trying to deploy the changes as a continuous deployment. As and when there is some changes in this particular branch, it's going to detect those changes and it's going to deploy those changes. Now, as I talked about, we always do the incremental build. That meaning we only identify the latest changes and we only move the changes. That's where we enable the speed for your deployment. Now, this is where the quality comes into play, meaning that I can enable my code scan here. Once I enable my code scan, since my this is a default global setting, and I can, if the criteria is not met, if for example, when I run the code scan and if the violation is of type error, it will stop the deployment. Now this is a global setting. If you want to override that global setting and mark something else during your configuration of the CI job, you'll be able to go ahead and do it. So once I configure all this information and save this job, you can schedule this. You can schedule this on a weekly or a daily basis. And once the job runs, you can see there are different builds within this for this particular job. And when I get into this, like this build has been run, and if I have to look into my code scan, I'll be able to again go ahead and see what are my violations, what happened, and if there was a violation, if there was a violation of type error, it will stop the deployment. It will not move any further from here. So I'll just stop here. It is just a very quick demo of CodeScan and AutoRABIT integration. If you have more questions or you want to look more deeper into the CI/CD offering along with different integrations along with CodeScan, please reach out to our team. We'll be happy to go ahead and facilitate that. Chris, back to you.
Actually, I think it's to me, Peter. Yeah, so as Peter and Will were able to demonstrate the integration, it's a very tight integration that we have. We already have some customers using this integration. As I mentioned, it comes at no additional cost. This integration piece that AutoRABIT has built with CodeScan, so it enables you to do all these things much more effectively as part of your DevOps lifecycle that you're doing. Chris?
Great. So we have one last poll for you that I'm launching right now. This will just help let us know if you're interested in receiving direct follow-up from CodeScan or AutoRABIT. And I am launching poll 2 right now. Give everybody 10, 15 seconds to request follow-up or not. And then we will move on after this poll to the Q&A session. We have a few great questions that have come in, a few that have already been answered, but I may ask the presenters to speak to those questions that have been answered via text as well, just to kind of illuminate the broader audience as well. Okay, so thank you for your responses to poll number 2, and we can move into the questions section. I can start. Peter, I think this one is for you. Can you please help me understand how to move a profile to a different environment using Easy Commit?
Yeah, it's a good question. So that is where the charm of AutoRABIT comes into play, right? Yes, it's part of the metadata deployment. So when you get into the Easy Commit, and when I scan the components, it will scan the profiles, and if there is any changes, it will pick up those changes, and you'll be able to move the profiles. You will be able to commit into your version control. Once you commit into the version control, and you'll be able to pick up that, and you'll be able to deploy using any of the deployment modules.
Great, thank you. I've got one for Will as well. With CodeScan, are you able to customize the standard rules? For example, certain limitations in the Apex test framework require see all data equals true. So even though it's not best practice, it may be required. I'd want to tell CodeScan not to flag that.
Yes, you can. So we come out of the box with a bunch of rule sets for the separate languages that we support, but they are all customizable. You can remove rules, add rules to them, lower severities, and even for individual issues, you can mark them as false positives so they won't appear again. And this can be set as a default. So every time that an AutoRABIT scan runs or a general code scan, you can exclude those rules from showing up.
Great, thank you. Peter, I have one for you. The questioner asks if there is any statistics available, for example, compare how much time I can save using AutoRABIT for CI/CD instead of doing it the old-fashioned way via Jenkins.
Yes, it's a very good question. So again, it drills down to the point where you're doing a build versus buy. But whereas if I have to give a very quick comparison, as I said, it's a quick one-click deployment tool. You don't need to worry about the functionalities or building up the deployment script. So what here in AutoRABIT is the one thing is ease of use, wherein you just log into AutoRABIT, you select what are the components, what you need to deploy. It will package according to the Salesforce standards, and it will go ahead and deploy those changes into your respective sandbox. Now, coming into the statistics, right? I talked about the build, the way we do the build. In Jenkins, either you do everything or nothing. But whereas when it comes to the AutoRABIT, we do two kinds of deployment. That is where you save time. That is where you move with speed. Like, just to give you one of our biggest bottling company, their deployment was like almost 3 days, 3 to 4 days when they start the deployment, along with different activities like running the code coverage, running the code scans, and so on. We have reduced them to 2 hours. How we do it? We automate a lot of those stuff, and also on top of that, the way we do the builds. I talked about a little bit during my introduction to AutoRABIT that we do two kinds of deployment. One is the incremental builds, meaning that we take only the changes, and another one is a delta, meaning that let's say that you moved your changes, like we baseline those changes. You are using version control for your deployment. Now, as of today, let's say you committed 3 changes. We pick up the 3 changes and deploy it. Now, tomorrow you move with another 3 changes. Now, whereas in Jenkins, it doesn't have a logic, or it doesn't have a capability to identify what was deployed unless and until you build it. But within AutoRABIT, we support that incremental and delta, wherein the tool is intelligent enough to go ahead and identify that, okay, the changes 1, 2, 3 were already deployed. I need not pick up those changes. I'll only pick up changes 4, 5, 6, and I'll move that. On top of that, we go one level deeper into the code, and we only take the changes. We don't move the, like I talked about profile changes, how we move. Like if you have 500,000 lines of code, now out of that 500,000 lines of code, you only change like line 100 to 120. 20 lines were changed because of some permission you change. We'll only identify that 20 and move that 20. So that way you're saving more time, and you're reducing the deployment time and increasing your velocity of deployments. And along with that, there are different way of how we do the test. Like let's say when you get into a production, you also do the code coverage, right? Code coverage is either in a traditional Salesforce manner, either you run everything or you manually pick and choose. It's a very tedious process, but that we automate that code coverage, wherein we have a particular feature called as run test based on changes. It will, based on your class which has been deployed, it will identify those test classes. It will only pick the related test classes, and it will run it. So these are some of the statistics I can give. These are only a couple of them what I produced. There are n number of them, how we can benefit with AutoRABIT. If you need more details, we can talk more, but just to give you highlights, these are the two how we can do it.
Thanks, Peter. There was one that we had answered privately to the asker, but I think that it's worth asking out loud for everyone. Does AutoRABIT accept the CodeScan settings that you have in your CodeScan? So can you transfer, or are the settings you have set up in CodeScan automatically available to you if you're using CodeScan within AutoRABIT?
So
Yes.
the way it works, go ahead.
Sorry. Oh no, okay. Yeah, like we went over before for the quality profiles. So anything to do with those rules and the quality profiles will carry over to AutoRABIT. So, to do with all the issues that are being found and the severities they're being found at, and all of since it's scanning directly to the CodeScan dashboard, all of your dashboard settings will remain as well. Did you have anything to add to that, Peter?
Yeah, just to add up, right? It still, whatever governance or settings what you put in CodeScan is going to be your primary settings. What we do is we integrate with code scanning, meaning that when we connect to CodeScan to do those checks, if you have put any rules in CodeScan, all those rules are going to be valid, and it's going to be validated against those rules. And if something is failing or is being detected there, it will reflect back to AutoRABIT. So we go hand in hand with CodeScan.
Great. And then one more question for you, Peter. Using AutoRABIT, can we deploy changes to multiple instances at the same time?
Yes, we if in the deployment, if you are using the CI jobs, we can chain it together. Like, if once, let's say that I deploy my changes into my development org, and on successful deployment, it's not just I will go ahead and deploy into multiple environments. If everything looks good, if my functional text was done, my data loading, if we certify the deployment, and based on that, on successful deployment, we can chain multiple jobs together to move that to different environments. We can tag, like once a deployment is done in your development, you can again trigger a deployment to your integration, and so on. You can chain multiple jobs together for different environments. Within deployment, the regular deployment module, also we have something called as redeploy and promote. So rather than like in a typical scenario, when you move a changes to development and you're done with it, again, if you want to move the same kind of changes, you want to either package it again, create those package.xmls, or if you're using changer, you need to move those changes into a different environment, deploy. We have something called as redeploy and promote. You don't need to go through that whole 3 steps. You can directly pick up the changes which went into your development, and you will be able to pick up with a click of a button. You will be able to move those same changes into multiple environments. We have that facility within AutoRABIT.
Great. So I think for our last question, I'm going to pick up one that was answered privately, but could be useful for the group. With the CodeScan and AutoRABIT integration, can we stop the build and notify a set of users about code vulnerabilities using AutoRABIT?
Yes, that's where we have put those governance and check, right? Like we don't need to stop it manually. It's all automated process. If you set those limits or violations, let's say that there are different violations based on your priority, right? If you can set those violations, and based on those violations, you can automatically stop the deployment, and the trigger can go back to your release team. You can configure all those notifications, whomever you need within your team, to inform them. So it's not a manual activity. You can automate that process.
Great. Okay, we got 2 more questions that came in while you were answering that one, and then I think we can call it a day after those 2 questions. But if there are additional questions or issues that anyone on this call would like to address, feel free to contact us via the follow-up email that goes out after this meeting. So when a deployment fails in AutoRABIT and users are notified, does it send the error code description and tips to fix it? Do users have to run CodeScan in local to get more details related to the error?
No, it is all, again, a notification process is very robust. You will get an email notification as and when, let's say that I'm trying to do the deployment, and the tool found out there is some kind of error and it stopped the deployment. You can either, there are 2 ways of looking into it. You can directly log into your CodeScan and look at what are those violations in your dashboard, or within the history of your deployments, there is I showed you how the CodeScan look. It will show you what are those errors. Along with that, you'll also get the email notification with a detailed report of your CodeScan. What are those violations and how you need to fix those violations.
Great. And then finally, how can we deploy permission sets in modules? For example, multiple unlocked packages sharing permission sets with their own permissions in the package.
How can we deploy permission sets and modules? Okay,
Yes.
for example, multiple unlock package share permission sets with their own permissions in the package. Yeah, so like we are talking about the SFDX kind of a deployment. If you're using the unlock packages, and if they are related to, there are different ways of handling it. Like one is like you can keep since it is a permission is a common module, you can keep that as a common module, and you, along with, whenever you're trying to move the different package, you can tag along with that. Or you can individually move, there is no dependency, right? Like you can move that as a 2 different deployments. Like you can move your unlock packages on top of that. Either you can club it together or you can move it separate. So there are a couple of options how you want to handle those changes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Um, So for those of you who requested follow-up after the meeting, CodeScan or AutoRABIT will be in touch to address any follow-up questions that you have. For all attendees of this call, you should get an email next week with an on-demand version of this webinar so that you can review all of the topics that we discussed today. And I think that's all we have for you. I want to thank our panelists for joining us and for our attendees for spending an hour of your morning with us. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.